If you're tuning in right now and you feel like you're wading through molasses, if your usual to-do lists are staring at you and you just cannot make yourself care about them, I invite you to stop trying to force it for just a second. I want to be really clear here. This is not some discipline problem for an ADHD brain. This is a biological reality. If you live in the Northern Hemisphere, this episode, it comes out during the cold, dark winter months. Now, of course, this also applies to you in the Southern Hemisphere if you're listening just in about 6-ish months from now. But I offer this to say you're not imagining this low energy. You're not imagining the friction. It makes sense why we feel this way. And that's what we're going to explore today in episode 340 of the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast. We're going to create what I'm calling a wintering toolkit. We're going to look specifically at why so many of us do feel this low energy slump in the winter months, as well as specific strategies for 3 different phases of energy so that you can meet yourself where you are and provide the support you need. Are you ready? Let's get into it. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm thrilled that you're here today. Can we talk about this lower energy that so many of us experience during the darker months of the year? As I mentioned in the intro, whether we're in the northern or southern hemisphere, there are these times of year where we just don't get as much sunlight. And sunlight has such a critical role on our circadian rhythms, our sleep timing, our serotonin production. And when combined together, it ultimately impacts our baseline energy and drive, motivation. And it seems that for adults with ADHD, this impact might be even stronger. There's actually a study that was done in the Netherlands, and I'll link to it in the show notes, where they asked 259 adults with ADHD about seasonal mood swings, and 27% reported winter depression, compared to 3% in neurotypical brains. But why is this? Well, one of the reasons suggested is that a lot of adults with ADHD experience something known as delayed circadian rhythms, or as we talked about in episode 251 of the podcast, delayed sleep phase syndrome. So we explored in that episode how there are studies that suggest 73 to 78% of children and adults with ADHD navigate this delayed sleep phase syndrome, which essentially makes it more challenging for us to wake up and go to sleep at, quote, regular wake and sleep times. We naturally feel alert later. Mornings feel more challenging. Our internal clock just doesn't align with the, quote, normal social expectations. So if that's already the case, and then you add in shorter days, less sunlight, it becomes even more challenging because morning sunlight is one of the strongest signals that helps our brain shift our circadian clock back earlier. So in these darker seasons, that signal gets even weaker and our rhythms can start shifting even later. On top of that, there's often lower levels of vitamin D because of that reduced sunlight, especially for those of us in the colder parts of the Northern Hemisphere. For example, I'm recording this in Minnesota and the current wind chill, is about negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, I'm not going out in a t-shirt and shorts to get some sun exposure. No, thank you. And low levels of vitamin D have similarly been found in people who have seasonal affective disorder. Now, the good news here is that we can also put in supports. I'm not going to just leave it at, so sorry about that. The winter's just going to suck. Okay, there are things we can do about this. But before we do, I invite us to also manage some expectations. Okay, this is not a situation where we're going to just push through and burn ourselves out, because that's not sustainable. That's not what we do here. When our energy is low, but we maintain extremely high expectations of output, getting started, it just feels even more challenging. In fact, many of us avoid getting started at all because we'll set such high expectations and essentially set ourselves up to fail before we begin because we know, well, this is just what I have to do. But then the back of our mind's like, but I don't have the capacity to do that. There's no way I can do that. And so we don't even get started because we know we can't possibly meet that capacity demand. And then for many of us, shame starts creeping in because we think we, quote, should be able to do that. But again, when we are feeling depleted, our executive functions struggle even more. And to be clear, for those of us with ADHD, our executive functions already have a hard time. This is why adulting tasks feel especially challenging for us, because it's our executive functions that help with self-regulation and organization and sequencing and planning and time management and emotional regulation and impulsivity, all the things. All of that is extra challenging for our brain. So when we add in the fact that we don't get enough sleep and when we're feeling low energy, it makes sense why just pushing through is not sustainable whatsoever. It is a recipe for burnout. So that's not what we're doing. Okay. Logical question, then what are we supposed to do, Paula? Because all I've ever done is just push through. Well, what I want to propose instead of pushing through is supporting ourselves through this experience, through the low energy. So supporting ourselves through these low energy seasons means responding to what is actually happening in our body, providing regulation support before we expect any type of output, and then matching that kind of support to our current capacity. So I find that when our energy is truly low, not just when the brain is feeling some resistance to starting. We talked about this in episode 327, where we looked at mental fatigue versus resistance. I'm talking about when we are feeling that genuine fatigue, that exhaustion. Our nervous system is telling us something important. And what it needs depends on where we're at. Sometimes we need full passive rest. Sometimes we need gentle activation to get moving. Sometimes we're capable of doing some things, but we need to drastically lower the bar of what doing things means. So instead of a one-size-fits-all rule, we're going to break the Wintering Toolkit, the supports, into 3 phases. And the key here is as we go through these 3 phases, matching the support to your current capacity, not your ideal capacity, not the capacity your brain thinks you, quote, should be able to do. When capacity is low, we are not asking ourselves, what should I do? We're instead going to work toward asking, what phase am I in right now? And what support do I need? So let's start with phase 1. I think about phase 1 or the category 1, however you want to think about it, as 0% effort required. Okay? 0% effort phase. This is when making decisions is hard, movement is hard, you have nothing in the tank. You know that feeling when somebody asks you, hey, what do you want for dinner? And your brain's like, what? Don't ask me that. Or you open your task list and literally every single thing seems impossible. You read it, maybe nothing even registers, not because the tasks are objectively hard, but because the act of choosing where to start melts your brain. Or maybe you think about letting yourself relax and you're going to watch a show or something, but the act of choosing what to watch seems too much. Okay, this is phase 1. This is 0 effort required. And here's what's important to know in this phase. This phase has nothing to do with doing. This phase is not about doing, it is about receiving. Receiving care for yourself. The goal here is nervous system safety, nervous system regulation and grounding. We are not trying to be productive here. We are not pushing through. We are letting our body regulate. Because here's what's happening in your nervous system during this phase. Your parasympathetic nervous system, it's needing support. This is the part of your nervous system that's responsible for rest and digestion and recovery. When we are depleted, it needs some help calming down. Okay, that stress response is activated, and so we want to create a sense of safety in the body. So how do we do that? Well, warmth or deep pressure with weighted blankets or eye masks or compression clothing, and also predictable sensory input. These can all help us lower our cortisol levels and support our regulation. And when the nervous system perceives that sense of safety, that's when our executive functions become more available later. Okay, so we're not skipping this step, this is a really critical step, especially if we're in that shutdown phase where we can't make decisions and we can't think clearly. We need to help ourselves regulate. So we're honoring this phase because it's what actually allows us to get to the next phases. I'll share what this looks like for me personally, okay? So in the winter months, I generally keep my heated blanket on my lap. Let me pull it up here. It's like right here, heated blanket, okay? I keep this on my lap all winter because it's warming, it's grounding, it's soothing, it's super soft. Also, it's just so cold in Minnesota. I need it. And then if I'm feeling particularly activated or depleted, I might lay down with my weighted blanket as well. And I basically do a sensory reset or a sensory rest. So I have the heated blanket and then the weighted blanket on top of that. I have a weighted eye mask and I put on my favorite brown noise machine and I just let my senses rest. I find it to be incredibly restorative anytime I'm feeling activated or just genuinely depleted. I have nothing left in the tank. Okay, so that's what it looks like for me specifically. Let's talk about some tools more broadly in this phase, okay? First, as I alluded to, is using some sort of gentle heat. So if we bring in a heated blanket or heating pads, or you take a warm bath or a shower, you're essentially increasing circulation and muscle relaxation, and that signals safety to the nervous system. So in short, that warmth is regulatory. The second approach is auditory comfort. So for some of us, if we just are in silence, it can kind of amplify internal chatter, or maybe our ears just start tuning into the hum of the electricity in some charger or whatever. Oh, I can't handle that. So not super regulating, what we can do is bring in familiar sounds that can help occupy the brain without demanding attention. So that might be, like I mentioned, brown noise for myself. It could also be if you have a familiar show you've seen hundreds of times, you might just put that on in the background, or like coffee shop ambiance. Some people like that. Maybe you have a favorite playlist you've heard over and over and over. The key here is familiar. We want familiar, not novel, because familiar is calming and novel can be activating. And right now we're aiming for calming. Okay? And then the third is, as I mentioned, deep pressure. So I know I've talked about in past episodes as well how much I love my weighted blanket. I find it incredibly calming. It's so effective. And one of the main reasons it is because a weighted blanket is proprioceptive input. What that means is that it's providing sensory information from your muscles and your joints that helps your brain basically understand where your body is in space. And then the deep pressure specifically helps us calm that fight or flight. It helps us support the regulation. So again, weighted blanket, heavy pillows, maybe stacked on your chest, or you kind of hug it. Speaking of hug, it could be like a tight hug from your partner or something, if that feels good. One of my other favorites is having a pet kind of lean on me or sit on my lap, depending on their size, right? Now, here's what I want to offer in this phase. Regulating, that's all we need to do here. We're not getting things done. Regulating is enough. This is not a step we need to rush through in order to get to the quote real work. This is the real work. Because when our nervous system feels safe and grounded, that's when other stuff becomes possible. So this is key. If our nervous system is dysregulated, we need to regulate first. Now, the second phase, I like to think about as we maybe have 5% worth of effort. So we were 0% before. Now we maybe have 5% of effort. You have some capacity. You haven't completely drained your battery to nothing, but you're definitely not at full charge. You're maybe at low power mode, okay? You can move. You can get up and make a coffee. You could open the blinds. You could take a short walk, but planning your whole day, choosing which project to tackle, breaking it down, deciding what to make for dinner, get out of here with that. We're not there yet, okay? In this second phase, we're going to use things like light and gentle movement to help you wake up your system and give you that nudge forward. So the goal here is simple support. We're going to jumpstart gently with things that help you reset your circadian rhythm. Now, this will take time. It's something that builds up gradually and makes a big impact. Because what's happening here when we're resetting our circadian rhythm is that we're working directly with our body's natural wake-up signals. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, for many of us with ADHD, especially during the winter, these signals are already compromised. So research has shown that bright light therapy, especially at 10,000 lux, that's the level of brightness, that can help reset our circadian rhythm and increase serotonin production. Now, you don't have to use a light. You can also just go outside. But like I said, when you live in a place where it's quite dark for a long time, you may need some sort of a light. So again, we're not trying to think our way or strategize our way into energy. We're going to use biology and adjusting our circadian rhythm to help us generate that energy. So again, I'll share what it looks like for me personally, and then we can talk about the more broad tools. So as I've said probably a bunch of times now in this episode, in Minnesota, it doesn't get light for a very long time. So I think it's like a 7:30 sunrise or something right now. So I've been up, I've worked out, I've gotten ready for the day. I walk the dog in the dark, right? It's dark for a while. So I have a daylight lamp that's the 10,000 lux, and I keep it in my bathroom. So when I'm washing my face and I put on my makeup and stuff in the morning, I have that light on right on my countertop. And so I'm getting that exposure to the bright light to help simulate that early morning sunlight. And it, again, effectively helps me set my circadian rhythms. And then as soon as I can, I do try and get outside in the actual daylight once the sun is up, even if it's a few minutes and totally freezing cold. I do think that that's helpful. Now, I do want to offer here, I am an N of one, okay? This is just my personal experience, but my psychiatrist years and years ago was the first person to suggest getting one of these lights. And I must have had the light too close to my eyes, or it was far too bright. This was probably 2015, 2016. And it caused some damage. And it was years before I could look at a bright screen, like a full computer screen, without any type of blue light blocking lenses on. I would get like headaches and it would just hurt my eyes. And in fact, if you go back to my earliest YouTube videos, you'll see I'm always wearing glasses. That's why. Now, thankfully, that sensitivity has lessened over the years. I also bought a blue light blocking shield for my computer screen, so I don't have to wear the glasses all the time. But I do offer this as a heads up. It was absolutely user error. I'm sure I was just way too close, or I looked directly into it. I don't know what I did, but something hurt my eyes, made them incredibly sensitive. I now have a different light. And like I said, it sits on my countertop. It's a bit lower than eye level. And I've noticed a very positive impact on my mood and my sleep regularity without any of that eye pain that I had. So that is how I help myself jumpstart in a safe way, unlike when I first used the light for myself in these dark days, these dark mornings. So now let's talk broadly about the tools. Like I said, the first support here is light exposure. This is a huge one. If you've ever listened to a single episode, a single section of an episode of the Huberman Lab podcast, you've probably heard him say this multiple times. Morning light is incredibly impactful, incredibly important. It's one of the strongest signals that helps our brain shift our internal clock and boost that serotonin production. And the ideal, like I said, is actually getting outside in the morning without any type of sunglasses on. Get that early morning light right when you've woke up. But if you live somewhere dark with very dark mornings like I do, having some sort of lamp can make a big difference. And again, the key here is getting that bright light exposure early. That's when you want to have that light. A second strategy is hydration. So if you're like me, you probably reach for coffee or tea or something first thing in the morning, a Diet Coke, whatever your caffeine of choice is. Makes sense. But it's also interesting to note that dehydration can look a lot like fatigue and brain fog. Okay. And a lot of ADHD medications can worsen dehydration. So before we reach for the coffee, the tea, the whatever caffeinated beverage it is, maybe try drinking a full glass of water first. Or eat some watery snacks, some grapes or cucumbers or oranges or whatever. Okay? Hydrate. And then the third strategy here is some sort of gentle movement. I'm not talking about a full workout. I'm talking about some sort of rhythmic movement that helps stimulate the vestibular system and wake up the prefrontal cortex a little bit. This could look like rocking in a rocking chair or bouncing on a yoga ball, going for a walk around the block, maybe while getting in your morning sunlight. Feed two birds with one stone. The movement doesn't have to be big, but some sort of movement can be useful. And then the fourth strategy here, using some sort of novelty scent. So the olfactory nerve, it's a fast track to the brain. This is why, if you smell something sharp, it can wake you up fast, right? It can cut through that fog. So you might try peeling an orange, or maybe you smell some peppermint oil or coffee beans or something. That sensory jolt can also help activate your system, again, in a more gentle way. So in this second phase, again, what we're doing here is helping wake up the system. Then we get to phase 3. This is where we are capable of doing some things, but we're still feeling depleted. We're not going to push ourselves. So here's how we know we're in the third phase. You can function, but certainly not at full capacity, probably not even half capacity. Big plans, goals, those types of things still overwhelm your brain, still makes your brain want to melt. But smaller tasks, you can kind of take them in, comprehend, you can do some of them. You want to get some things done, but you don't want the pressure of anything big. Anytime the brain's like, but I want to make sure I do this thing right because this is really important, that's when it feels too hard, right? That's what stops us from taking the first step. So if you know you want to start doing something, but not something that's really big or demanding, you're probably in phase 3. And here's the trap that so many of us fall into with phase 3, which is our brain thinking something like, well, I technically can do it, so I should do it this way. Or I've always done it this way, so I should do it this way. Or I've always been able to do it this way. Why can't I do it this way now? So let's pause this line of thinking just for a moment. Because what I would argue is that just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should. That's not like an equal equation. I can do this equals I should do this. That's not it, okay? And it definitely doesn't mean you should do it the way you've always done it just because that's the way you've done it, especially when your capacity is lower. So let me give you a few examples in a regular kind of day-to-day life of what it might look like to create some lower demand activities. Let's say you're at home and the version of you that had a lot more energy earlier in the month had set a plan of deep cleaning the kitchen or something, right? Past you was like, this is a great idea. I have a ton of energy. Current you is like, who made these plans? Maybe we set an intention of rather than deep cleaning the whole kitchen, we're going to just make sure that we run the dishwasher whenever it's full over the next couple of weeks, because we know that will remove the visual clutter of dirty dishes, which can be a huge sensory drain, but it's not requiring us to scrub out the fridge or reorganize the pantry or something. Or let's say you had planned to do all the laundry this weekend and you're gearing up to do it, but you just don't have it in you. Maybe you just wash your socks and underwear because look, you can rewear jeans. You can rewear a sweatshirt. You may not feel as excited about rewearing socks, but you set a minimum baseline. If I just wash these things, I can rewear my jeans this week. It's fine. Or for work, instead of going in thinking, all right, I have to clear my whole inbox 0 today, it's Monday, whatever. Maybe you just scan for fires. You search for urgent, or you search for the specific boss names that you know you need to follow up with. And the goal here is just to ensure that nothing explodes today, okay? Just for today, we're going to search out the urgent and the emails from these few people. Otherwise, we're going to let it be okay. Or instead of planning for the whole week, maybe you just pick 2 non-negotiables that need to happen. 2 things that actually have consequences or deadlines if they're missed. Write them on a sticky note, keep them front and center. Everything else is bonus. Or with personal care. Instead of following that elaborate skincare regimen that you love to follow normally, maybe you just decide, I'm going to splash water on my face and put on lotion. Done. And the only reason I'm putting on lotion is because that tight, dry skin is like sensory nightmare. If I splash water on my face and I put on lotion, at least I prevent that. So again, the goal here in the phase 3 is preservation. We're not expanding. We're not trying to challenge ourselves and push ourselves. we're staying engaged without draining our system. We're protecting our capacity now so that future momentum actually becomes possible. And that's the core principle of phase 3. When we're capable but feeling a bit depleted, we want to lower that bar intentionally. We're being strategic about where our energy goes. And then when we pair that with the biological resets of getting our early sunlight to reset our circadian rhythms, staying hydrated, and we give ourselves that sensory rest whenever we need it, we're now providing the actual support we need during these low energy seasons. And in fact, I'll also mention here, if you're looking for additional supports for when you're feeling stuck, when you're overwhelmed, you're not quite sure what you need, you may want to check out my free quiz. It helps you discover your unique overwhelm type, and I designed it specifically for our ADHD brains. It's just 7 simple questions. It'll take you less than a minute, and you'll discover the specific way that overwhelm presents for your brain, the obstacles that pattern creates, and powerful steps to help you support yourself through that overwhelm and then shift gently into action. So if you want to take this quiz, you can head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/quiz, take it now and get your personalized results. Now, before we close out, I want to name something important. These 3 phases that we explored today, they are not linear. You are most likely not going to move neatly from phase 1, check, phase 2, check, phase 3, check, and now I will never go back. That's not going to happen. If it happens, let me know. I would be surprised. It's probably not going to be some orderly progression. It might go in that order, but then go back to phase 2 or phase 1, or you go from 1 to 3 or whatever. The point here is not to have some perfect sequence. The point is to notice whatever phase you're in and then give yourself what you need in that moment. Now, I also want to pause here and say that while this self-support is really powerful and these strategies can make a real difference, they're not always enough on their own. If you are noticing that low mood or fatigue is lasting for weeks without improvement, if your daily functioning is impacted, if your symptoms are worsening over time, if you're having thoughts of hopelessness, of self-harm, please reach out for help. Reach out to your doctor, to your therapist. You can go to findahelpline.com. That provides free confidential support. I believe it's available in over 130 countries. I'll link to that in the show notes. Professional help is available, and it's such a powerful way to expand your support system. And look, you deserve to have as many incredible people on your team as you need. So as we move through these winter months, I want to leave you with this permission and reminder. Protecting your capacity now means that we are making future momentum possible. When you honor where you are, when you match the support to your actual capacity instead of some ideal capacity, you're not giving up. You're not lowering standards. You're being strategic. You're being sustainable. You're taking care of the person who wants to show up tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. And that is busy being awesome. Now, if you have any other people in your life who you think might benefit from this reminder as well, would you be a rock star and share this episode with them? You could send it in a text message, let them know they're on your mind, maybe snap a screenshot, share it on your Instagram stories, whatever you do. Please know I so appreciate you for helping me get these resources to even more busy, awesome brains who need them. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you're ready to take these concepts and apply them to your life, if you're ready to learn how to support your ADHD in a way that's best for you, I invite you to check out today's show notes where you can learn more about how we can work together, both in my small group coaching program, We're Busy Being Awesome, and in one-on-one coaching. Also, if you want to discover the unique way that overwhelm presents for your ADHD brain, the obstacles that pattern creates, and powerful steps to help you shift from overwhelm into action, be sure to take that free quiz and discover your overwhelm type. You can tap through the link in the show notes or head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/quiz. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.